Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling drained, not because of what was said, but because of how deeply it got to you, like someone reached into your mind and pulled your peace apart without raising their voice? That's the true power of toxic people, not their words, but your reaction to them. They don't need to shout to control you. They only need you to respond. Anger, frustration, guilt. These are the currencies they trade in. And every time you pay with your energy, you fund their influence. But what if you stopped spending? What if you became the kind of person who no longer reacts, not out of fear, but out of mastery? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed." Real strength, then, is not in the counterattack. It's in the stillness that refuses to be moved. Today, we explore what it truly means to become untouchable, not by escaping people, but by mastering yourself from within. If you've ever felt tired of the drama and ready to reclaim your inner silence, you're exactly where you need to be. Let's begin. 1. Your reaction is their power. Here's a truth most people refuse to face. Toxic people are not your real problem. Your reaction to them is. You can change jobs, leave a city, cut off that friend, even go no contact with family. But if you haven't trained your mind, if your emotional immune system is still fragile, the same pain will follow you. New people, same reaction. New city, same internal chaos. The names and faces may change, but the triggers remain, because until you master your response, nothing truly changes. Epictetus said, "It's not things that upset us, but our judgment about them." A toxic person's words aren't your downfall, it's what you let those words mean to you. Their real power isn't in what they say, it's in how easily they make you flinch. Let me give you a real example. Imagine someone at work. We'll call her Karen. Every meeting she takes small, calculated jabs. "Well, some of us double-check the reports," she says with a forced smile. It's clearly about you. Your chest tightens. You want to correct her, defend yourself, maybe even throw a jab back, but instead, you don't. You breathe, you stay grounded, you speak with clarity, not defensiveness. You keep your posture relaxed, your voice steady. And just like that, something shifts, because calmness in the face of provocation, that's unnerving. Your silence becomes your strength, and her chaos, it becomes exposed. When you stop reacting, you stop being their mirror. And without a mirror, people like Karen can't play their game. This is where most people stay trapped. They live as emotional puppets, their strings pulled by sarcasm, passive aggression, or guilt. One comment ruins their whole day. One rude text makes them spiral into hours of overthinking. But here's what the Stoics taught. No one can disturb your peace unless you hand them the keys. And most people, they're handing them over freely. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to convince anyone of your character. You don't have to win the argument. What you need is inner discipline. Discipline to breathe instead of explode. Discipline to prioritize your energy over someone else's drama. Discipline to say to yourself, this is not worth my peace. Because the smartest way to disarm a toxic person is not with anger, but with emptiness. No fuel, no energy, no attention. You stop feeding the fire, and it dies. Mental strength isn't loud. It doesn't argue. It doesn't seek revenge. It doesn't need to prove anything. It stays still in a room full of chaos and walks away without a scratch. That is stoicism in action. You don't need to change toxic people. You need to change how accessible you are to them. And that change starts not with your words, but with your silence. Because the moment you stop reacting is the moment you stop bleeding power. And that's when you become dangerous, in the best possible way. Now let's talk about how to rebuild that inner power so no one can steal it again. 2. Toxic people thrive on your reaction. Let's get something clear from the start. Toxic people are not powerful. They don't have some hidden strength or superior mind. They don't control others because they're smarter or more strategic. What they have is practice. Years of emotional repetition. They've spent a lifetime mastering the rhythms of manipulation. They've trained themselves to sense weakness, to speak in tones that provoke guilt, to go silent when they know silence will make you squirm, and to say just enough to make you doubt your own sanity. For them, it's muscle memory. For you, it's confusion. But this isn't about you being weak. It's about you being untrained. You're stepping into emotional warfare without armor, without reflexes, without preparation. And then, after taking hits, you wonder why it hurts so much. Imagine walking into a boxing ring with a seasoned fighter. Of course you'll get knocked down, not because they're cruel, but because you never learned how to move, how to block, how to defend. That's what happens when you face a toxic person without emotional training. You become their opponent, but not their equal. The Stoics never blamed the external. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." If a single comment can ruin your day, if one message can unbalance your entire mood, then the issue isn't the message. The issue is your lack of discipline over your own mind. That's not criticism, it's an invitation to reclaim control. Let's take it to the real world. Ever notice how toxic people repeat the same pattern over and over? They insult, you explain. They guilt trip, you apologize. They twist your words and you try to clarify. You keep offering new strategies, more compassion, more silence, more explanations, while they keep playing the same old game. And that's not by accident. That's the program. That's their comfort zone. You're shifting constantly, trying to adapt. They aren't. And that's where the damage happens. Not in what they do, but in how you keep responding. The truth is, you've been operating from emotional chaos, not clarity. You react instead of reflect. You defend instead of detach. But what if one day you didn't? What if instead of trying to be understood, you simply stood still? What if you stopped needing closure and started valuing your composure? Because the moment you stop defending yourself is the moment you stop giving them power. The moment you stop reacting is the moment you stop bleeding energy. And from that silence, calm, unshaken, steady, you shift. You're no longer prey, you're presence. They can provoke, but they cannot move you. They can talk, but they cannot reach you. Because you're no longer playing their game. You're writing your own rules. And from here, everything begins to change. Because when reaction ends, power begins. Let's keep building that power in the next part. 3. Train your mind like a warrior. Training the mind like a warrior means building strength the same way a soldier or an elite athlete does, not through wishful thinking, but through disciplined repetition. Mental toughness isn't something you're born with. It's not something you unlock after reading a few quotes or watching a motivating speech. It's something you earn in silence when no one is clapping for you. You earn it every time someone disrespects you and you stay still. Every time you're baited into an argument and you choose peace over proving a point. Every time your pride wants to lash out, but your wisdom tells you to breathe instead. That's not passivity. That's mastery. Here's what most people don't understand. Toxic people aren't stronger than you. They've simply practiced their chaos longer than you've practiced your composure. But once you begin to train, to condition your mind the way a warrior conditions their reflexes. Everything changes. You become the kind of person who doesn't react out of impulse, but who responds with intention. You don't just hold your tongue, you hold your ground. And that's what terrifies those who thrive on conflict, your refusal to dance in their drama. Think about it. Every emotional outburst is a leak in your discipline. Every reaction, rage, defensiveness, panic, hands power to the very person trying to shake your center. You're not expressing your truth when you explode. You're surrendering your control. Epictetus said it plainly. Any person capable of angering you becomes your master. When someone can pull your emotions like a puppet string, they own you. And that's not strength. That's slavery. Let's challenge a common myth. You've been told that if you don't stand up and fight back, you're weak. That silence means submission. But reacting isn't strength, it's reflex. And reflexes aren't chosen, they're programmed. True strength isn't in snapping back. It's in choosing your response with precision. That's what Stoicism trains you for, not to suppress your emotions, but to select them wisely. Picture this. You've had a long day. Your partner, exhausted and irritable, throws a passive-aggressive jab. Must be nice to only think about yourself. The untrained mind fires back. Arguments erupt. Old wounds resurface. Hours are lost in emotional warfare. But the trained mind? It pauses. It doesn't take the bait. It calmly replies, "Let's talk when we're both ready to listen." That's not silence. That's strategy. That's executive-level self-respect. You didn't shut down. You chose not to be dragged down. And here's the deeper truth. Most of our reactions don't come from what was said. They come from our ego. We react because we feel misunderstood, insulted, unseen. We seek validation. But if your peace depends on other people's approval, you'll be broke every time someone disapproves. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you always own the option of having no opinion. You don't need to defend, you don't need to explain, you don't even need to care. So the next time someone tries to lure you into their chaos, pause, breathe. Remember that the strongest person in the room is rarely the loudest. It's the one who's mastered their inner battlefield. And that battle is what we'll keep training for in the next part. 4. The power of silence. In a world obsessed with noise, silence is often mistaken for weakness. But real power, the kind that doesn't shake when tested, rarely shouts. It doesn't beg to be seen. The strongest presence in any room is often the one who says the least. We've been conditioned to think that silence equals surrender. If you don't fire back, you've lost. If you don't explain yourself, they win. If you stay quiet, you must be afraid. But the truth is, silence isn't passive. It's precise. It's intentional. It's stoic. Toxic people don't thrive in silence. They suffocate in it. They're addicted to reaction, to emotional noise. They poke, prod and provoke, not because they want resolution, but because they want control. Your words give them a role to play. The victim, the misunderstood martyr, the clever antagonist. But when you stop speaking, you cut the scene. Their script falls apart. They escalate. They get louder. They fidget. Because your stillness reveals what they're trying to hide, their own inner chaos. Seneca once wrote, "He who does not know how to be silent does not know how to speak." Until you've mastered restraint, your words carry no weight. Silence, then, isn't a void. It's a weapon sharpened by discipline. It's emotional intelligence in motion. Let's ground this in something real. Picture this. You're at a family dinner. Your uncle, the one who always finds a way to make you the joke, leans back in his chair and says, just loud enough for the table to hear, "Still single?" Maybe you're just too picky for your own good. The room chuckles. All eyes drift to you. You feel the familiar burn in your chest. The old version of you might have fired back, rolled your eyes, or tried once again to justify your life choices. But not this time. This time, you simply take a slow sip of your drink. You smile, not with sarcasm, but serenity. And you say nothing. You let the comment hang there, exposed, awkward, meaningless. You stay composed, and in that stillness, you shift the entire energy of the room. That is control. That is presence. That is power without noise. Here's what terrifies toxic people most: when their bait doesn't work. When you don't flinch. When you don't play their game. Silence forces people to sit with their own words, and some can't bear the weight of that. They'll try to stir your emotions because they can't face their own. But you're not here to echo their chaos. You're here to embody clarity. So understand this. Silence doesn't mean the issue is ignored. It means you refuse to fuel it. You don't need to clap back to show strength. You don't need to lower yourself to their level because you've risen above it. Let the loud ones argue. Let the insecure shout. Let the untrained provoke. A wise man watches. A strong one waits. And you stay silent, not because you're afraid, but because you've trained for peace. That's not surrender. That's supremacy. And from that calm, we build something unshakable. Let's move forward. 5. Silence exposes their chaos. Here's the paradox. The calmer you become, the more chaotic they get. At first, your silence throws them off. Then it irritates them. Eventually, it begins to terrify them. Because toxic people don't actually fear conflict. They feed on it. What they fear is being irrelevant. And when you stop reacting, when you stop explaining, when you stop letting them reach into your mind and pull your strings, they realize something they never expected. Their control is gone. Toxic people are like fire. They need fuel to survive. Your outrage is oxygen. Your guilt is oxygen. Even your attempts to be understood, that too feeds them. But the moment you stop feeding the flame, it flickers. And in that flicker, they panic. So they escalate. They get louder, crueler, more calculated. They'll say things that cut deeper. They'll reach back into your past, throw your healing in your face, insult what you care about most. It's not a personal attack. It's a tactic. Because they feel the grip slipping and they're desperate to tighten it again. Think of someone who once had emotional control over you. Maybe it was a partner. Maybe it was a family member. Every time they reached out, you spiraled, whether in rage, confusion, or shame. But one day, something changed. They messaged, and you didn't respond. You didn't explain. You didn't justify. You simply chose silence, and that silence sent them spinning. Suddenly, they text again, then again. They play the victim. They accuse you of becoming cold, distant, heartless. But they're not checking in because they care. They're testing your boundary, seeing if your peace is just a performance or if it's real. This is where many people slip. They confuse the chaos for connection. They think the noise means they still matter. But the Stoics knew better. They taught us not to mistake noise for love. The storm gets louder when it's dying. That's not connection, that's desperation. What's really happening is deeper than drama. They're no longer dealing with the old version of you, the one who needed constant reassurance, who feared being misunderstood, who fought to explain themselves just to keep the peace. That version is gone. Now they're facing something they've never faced before, your stillness. And stillness reflects everything they've refused to face in themselves. Their insecurity, their emptiness, their lack of control. Because when you no longer serve as their emotional outlet, They're left with nothing but their own instability, and they hate what they see. Here's the takeaway. Toxic people aren't shaken by your arguments. They're shaken by your absence. They don't fear your voice. They fear your detachment. Because when you've trained yourself in stillness, when you've built a mindset rooted in discipline and peace, they can't touch you anymore. Let them shout. Let them twist. Let them try. You don't need to fight back. Just stay calm. Stay grounded. Stay gone. Because the moment you become unshakable, they realize the game is over, and that's when you win. Not with revenge, not with words, but with silence. Let's now explore how to protect that silence and yourself long term. 6. Stop being their audience. Toxic people aren't chaotic by accident. They're performers by design. Every guilt trip is rehearsed. Every backhanded compliment is carefully timed. Every silent treatment is deliberate. They don't just cause drama, they curate it. Because, to them, life is a stage, and they need an audience to feel alive. And here's the secret no one tells you. The moment you stop watching, reacting, explaining, the show collapses. The drama dies not because you fought it, but because you refused to clap. Think about someone in your life who thrives on spectacle. At family dinners, they dominate the room with subtle insults wrapped in jokes. At work, they plant tension like seeds and water it with victimhood. They don't care if your attention is positive or negative, just that it's yours. That's the fuel. That's the applause. But what happens when you walk away mid-scene? When you don't flinch, don't fire back, don't even blink? They stumble. They search the room. They scramble for a new target. Because their power was never in their words, it was in your reaction. The Stoics understood this deeply. A man who provokes you owns you, and the cure isn't confrontation, it's absence, it's emotional fasting. Your attention is not neutral, it's currency. And toxic people are master thieves. They bait you, trigger you, then sit back while you spend your peace trying to decode their behavior. But once you recognize this, you become intentional. You realize that not everyone deserves front row seats to your energy. You become like a disciplined gatekeeper, deciding who gets your time and who gets your silence. Here's a real moment. You're texting someone who always plays emotional games. They ghost you for days. Then suddenly they send something vague. Didn't expect this from you. The old you would have cared. And just like that, you're tempted to write back paragraphs. You want to defend yourself, explain, prove you're still kind, still thoughtful. But the new you don't respond. Not because you're cold, but because you're clear. You understand now, this is just another scene, and you've left the theater. That's not ghosting, that's intentional detachment, that's choosing peace over performance. And it's one of the strongest habits you'll ever develop. So here's the takeaway. Toxic people crave attention more than resolution. They provoke with silence, they manipulate with guilt, they perform with drama. But you're no longer in the audience. You've walked off the emotional stage, you've taken your mind back, and you've realized your peace is not a prop, your time is not a script, and your soul is not their playground. As the Stoics would put it, true power is quiet refusal. It's the moment the curtain falls and you're already gone. If this speaks to you, drop the word peace in the comments to let it land, and if you haven't yet, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Because the next part will show you exactly how to protect that peace from ever being stolen again. Let's keep going. 7. True freedom is mental detachment. Here's a truth most people avoid. You can block the number, delete the photos, move to another city, but if they still live in your mind, they still have power. because it was never just about physical distance. It was always about emotional detachment. You don't free yourself by walking away. You free yourself by walking clear, mentally, spiritually, silently. The real battleground is not your phone. It's not the messages, the memories, or the miles. It's your mind. And if someone can still control your peace by merely existing in your thoughts, then the war isn't over. You've heard people say it. I haven't talked to them in months, but I still think about what they said. Or, I blocked them, but I keep wondering if I was the one who messed up. That's not freedom. That's captivity disguised as closure. Here's the deeper truth. They don't have to be in your life to affect you. They only need to rent space in your head, and most people pay that rent daily, with guilt, with self-doubt, with imaginary conversations that never bring peace. But the Stoics offered a different definition of freedom, not the absence of people, but the absence of internal slavery. And that's where the real liberation begins. Let's take a real-world scenario. You go no contact with someone who drained you for years. No more drama, no more texts, no more confrontations. But now, you're sitting in silence, replaying the past, questioning your choices. You're wondering if you overreacted, if maybe they were right, if maybe, just maybe, they'll come back and finally say what you've been waiting to hear. But they won't. And even if they did, it wouldn't fix what they broke, because they already knew. They just didn't care. That's the moment you wake up. That's when detachment becomes your only path forward. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Detachment isn't the absence of love. It's the presence of self-respect. It's when you no longer seek closure from those committed to misunderstanding you, when you no longer need the apology, the explanation, the validation, when your peace no longer depends on them changing. You don't need one last text, one last conversation, one last anything. What you need is the courage to close the door with grace. To accept that the chapter is over, to stop rereading a story that only left you bleeding, because letting go is not losing. The Stoics never let go to surrender. They let go to win. Inwardly, quietly, completely. The true work begins not when you block them, but when you stop thinking about what could have been, when their name no longer stirs your heart or clenches your chest. When they become a paragraph, not the whole story. When indifference replaces intensity, that's freedom, that's detachment. And when you finally cut the invisible string, not with hate, not with spite, but with clarity, that's when you don't just leave the relationship, you rise above it. Now let's talk about how to rebuild yourself from that silence into someone no storm can shake. 8. Stop seeking their approval. There's a reason toxic people still hold power over you. It's not because they're wiser, stronger, or more insightful. It's because a part of you still wants something from them, their approval. You want them to say you mattered, to recognize the effort you gave, to finally admit you didn't deserve the way they treated you. But here's a truth that's hard to swallow. You don't need their approval. What you need is your own respect. Toxic people don't control you with logic. They control you by preying on your need for validation. They sense the places you doubt yourself and strike there with precision. They offer praise only when you conform. They withhold it when you show independence. And they use that push and pull to keep you close. It's not confusion, it's design. The game is simple. Dangle acceptance like a prize, then punish you for reaching for it. As long as you're chasing their recognition, they're writing your worth. Think back. Someone hurt you deeply. You knew they were wrong, yet instead of leaving, you explained. You reasoned. You waited. Why? Because you thought if they forgave you or understood you, you'd finally feel whole again. But no one can hand you self-worth. That's not how peace is found. As the Stoics taught, real strength doesn't come from external praise, it comes from within. Their approval isn't resolution, it's a high, brief, unreliable, and worse, addictive. Self-respect, in contrast, is quiet. It's not dramatic. It's the power to walk away without needing the last word. It's the discipline to not respond to the bait. Not because you're angry, but because you're done. It's the clarity that says, I no longer need to be understood by someone committed to misunderstanding me, and that shift, it changes everything. Marcus Aurelius once said, ambition means tying your well-being to what others say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions. Approval is a moving target. Self-respect is a foundation. You build it every time you keep your boundary, even when it hurts. Every time you choose peace over performance. Every time you let silence carry your strength. Because you don't need them to say you're enough. You need to believe it. Especially when they never will. That's when you stop performing, stop bending, stop waiting. That's when you reclaim something no one else can give you, your wholeness. And from that place, we move into a power they can no longer touch. 9. Use pain as fuel for growth. You've been hurt, not just annoyed, not just frustrated. You've been deeply wounded by someone who knew exactly how to cut you and chose to do it anyway. Maybe it was a betrayal, maybe it was manipulation, maybe it was the slow erosion of your self-worth by someone who claimed to care. Whatever it was, you're carrying the scar. But here's the question that changes everything. What are you going to do with it? Pain is a tool. If you learn to use it, most people stay stuck in one of two loops. They suppress the pain and pretend it never happened, or they stay inside it, replaying it over and over again, waiting for closure that never comes. But Stoicism offers a third path. Transform it. What stands in the way becomes the way. Marcus Aurelius. In other words, you don't avoid the pain, you face it, study it, learn from it, and then use it to sharpen yourself the power of constructive rage. There is a type of rage that destroys and a type that rebuilds. When you channel your pain through anger, through bitterness, through revenge, it poisons you. But when you channel it through clarity, discipline and direction, it becomes fuel. You don't scream back. You build in silence. You don't argue for validation. You validate yourself through results, through progress, through mastery. You take every ounce of rejection, every ounce of shame, every ounce of being overlooked, and you turn it into momentum. That's not denial. That's emotional alchemy, real-life example. You were in a relationship where your worth was constantly questioned. They made you feel like you had to earn love, that your best was never enough. You broke, you begged, you tried harder. Still, they left you feeling empty. But now you train, you heal, you rise. You build a life so powerful, so peaceful, so purpose-driven that they become a footnote in your story, not the headline. You stop living in reaction. You start living in rebirth. And no, it's not to prove them wrong. It's to prove to yourself that they never had the final say in who you'd become. Pain can refine or define. Pain is inevitable, what it turns you into. That's your choice. Toxic. People want your pain to define you. They want it to leave you stuck, doubting, small, unfinished. But when you use that pain as a fire to forge something deeper, more discipline, more clarity, more spiritual strength, you become something far more dangerous than angry, untouchable. I survived you. I grew from what you tried to break. And now I am someone you can no longer reach. That's real power. Takeaway. The pain they caused is not your shame. It's your source code. It's the evidence that you didn't quit. It's the beginning of your higher self. So don't hide from it. Don't run from it. Don't drown in it. Use it. Turn it into strength. Turn it into standards. Turn it into silence. So loud, eat a success. Your best revenge was never a reaction, it was always your evolution. In the end, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing nor come back. No emotional outburst, no need to explain, defend or convince. Just calm, stillness, silence. Because the moment you stop reacting, you stop giving away the one thing toxic people truly feed on: control. 10. Non-reaction is true power. Power isn't found in noise. It doesn't come from sharp words or dramatic outbursts. Real power, the kind the Stoics lived by, is silent. It doesn't react. It simply refuses to be moved. Most people mistake power for domination, for being the loudest in the room. But true strength is the man who can sit in the fire and not flinch. As Epictetus said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. No one can shake you unless you allow it. This is where real transformation begins. Imagine you receive a text filled with blame, guilt, and manipulation. The old you would have launched into explanations, drafted long responses, tried to defend your character, but now you read it. You breathe and you choose not to respond. Not because you're angry, not because you want revenge, but because you've outgrown the level of that conversation. You see it for what it is, a trap designed to pull you into the same old story, and this time you don't play your part. Non-reaction isn't weakness, it's not coldness, it's a mark of discipline. It means you've studied your own emotional landscape, you've learned your triggers. You've built the kind of internal architecture that no longer collapses under pressure. You're not suppressing your feelings, you're simply no longer enslaved by them. This is mental strength, spiritual clarity, the ability to choose your response or to choose no response at all and remain grounded in your peace. This is what separates the reactive from the resilient. Toxic people don't lose when you yell back. They lose when they can no longer reach you. And that moment doesn't come with a bang. It arrives with a calm refusal to give them access. You don't explain, you don't defend, you don't rise to the bait. You walk away, not in anger, but in certainty. Because your inner peace is no longer on the negotiation table. When you stop reacting, you stop bleeding energy. You stop playing a role in someone else's performance. And something powerful happens. You become untouchable, not by building walls, but by building depth. You rise, not through resistance, but through stillness. You thrive, not because you crushed them, but because they could no longer control you. And as you stand firm in that calm, they begin to fade. Their noise becomes background. Their power dissolves without your participation. Because the smartest way to deal with toxic people was never to fight them. It was to become someone they can no longer disturb. And from here, your peace becomes permanent. So now you see it clearly. The smartest way to deal with toxic people isn't revenge or reaction. It's becoming untouchable, not by cutting them off, not by making a scene, but by choosing not to let them live in your mind any longer. You didn't destroy them. You didn't have to. You simply stopped giving them access to your inner world. And in doing so, you took back what they could never hold for long, your peace. This is not weakness, it's mastery. It's choosing stillness over chaos, clarity over confusion. You no longer need to be heard to feel whole. You don't need them to understand you to know your worth. Let them talk. Let them spin stories. Let them seek an audience. You're not in the theater anymore, and in your silence, their control fades. If this message resonated and you're ready to keep walking this path of inner strength, take a moment to subscribe. Each video is a new step in building the kind of resilience no one can shake. And if today's message felt like a turning point, leave a comment below with just 3 words: no more games. Your healing might be the spark someone else needs. You've already started. Stay with it. In the next video, we'll go even deeper into becoming someone whose silence is stronger than their storm. Your peace isn't just protection, it's power.